I want to bring in Jason Buttrill, who is with us now. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Glenn.
You and I have been talking about this for a long time. We have spent a year on Ukraine, and this takes both of us by surprise. I have to hand it to the intelligence community, although I don't feel comfortable. Something's not right here. But the intelligence community and the Biden administration said this is what he was going to do, and he's done it.
Yeah, I agree. It's really crazy because when you study geopolitics, you learn to analyze and look at these things from that lens. You're taught that geopolitics is a study of maps, it's demographics, it's numbers, it's it's interests, hard line interests. And when someone starts acting, emotionally, like Putin has been doing over the past really year plus, you learn to kind of put that away and say, okay, well, he's obviously after something else, which I still think there's something else, involved, just like you said. So when the Biden administration was kind of saying, no, this is happening, full-scale invasion, all that, I didn't believe it was happening. I didn't. I was looking for something behind what was going on. And because this all seems so irrational. But I think the intelligence community was spot on. I've seen reports that it actually, the intelligence community coming out and saying that false flag attacks would happen. That would be the preempt to them doing a full-on invasion. I wasn't buying it. They were exactly right. And the reports say that it actually delayed Putin's invasion by possibly even a week. Like they wanted to do this last week and not this week. So the intelligence community and the Biden administration were exactly right on this. Now, there's ways to criticize other things, which we can get to later, of what they've done. But just a quick recap, the media started reporting last night that the invasion was going to commence around 4 a.m. Kiev time. And pretty much that was spot on. It happened around 4:15 Kiev time. And it's very, very conventional from what I've been noticing. I've been following this all night. This is not like Crimea in 2014 with unconventional warfare. This is a very conventional invasion. What we saw commencing around 4 a.m. Kyiv time was airstrikes to target command and control systems. That went as far as Kyiv, and it's a three-pronged attack coming from Belarus, coming from Crimea in the south, and coming from mainland Russia in the east. Now, we do not know how far they plan to push this, but it is a conventional invasion. It looks as if they will probably go further than just eastern Ukraine. Question now is how far they will go and how far tensions will rise, especially with NATO gathering troops all along the border of Ukraine.
Okay, so let's. It looks as though he was using conventional warfare to cut off the troops as they were kind of gathered at the borders of the two districts that President Putin said he was going to take. They went behind those lines and kind of cut them off so they can't fall back to defend Kyiv, correct?
Yes, that's correct, because they know that Ukraine's strategy here is they know they're going to get overwhelmed. So their strategy is their mainline forces in the east, guarding those two territories, as you said. Their strategy is to do a tactical retreat back into the urban areas within Ukraine. Then it turns into both a hybrid guerrilla warfare and heavy urban warfare in the large Ukrainian cities. That is very, very bloody. That is very, very dangerous for the Russian military as well as civilians, which Russia does not want to kill too many Ukrainian civilians, because that is going to be very, very unpopular in mainland Russia. But Ukraine's strategy here, as I said, is to get into the cities and turn this into an urban conflict and draw it out for as long as possible. Russia wants to stop that, and that explains why they dropped in behind the troops there.
Can they take the whole country just by air and cutting it all off?
They absolutely can take the whole country in the short term. It depends on how effective their air assets are, and that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the bomb from the air. We're seeing cruise missile strikes. So cutting off command and control all over the country and crippling Ukraine so they can eventually roll into the capital. That will happen, is my guess, unless somebody else intervenes, which I kind of highly doubt. But a short-term victory is really all Russia can hope for here. And that's another puzzling thing, because I can't imagine they think they win in the long term. In the long term, it's going to be too damaging financially and politically for Russia. So it's catastrophic in the short term. In the long term, I don't see how they win this unless there's some other grander strategy that we just don't know about, which could even be scarier, actually.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. We have some puzzling things. First of all, Putin said he wants to denazify Ukraine. Do you have any idea what that's about?
Same rhetoric he's been using since 2014. And that's directed more at the people of Russia, not anybody else in the world or Ukraine. But you've been using that World War II, sentiment to get public support to do what he's now doing. But that's going to continue, and no doubt he's going to provide some air quote evidence, that they're taking out some Nazi. But he's drawing on World War II nationalism.
He said that there has been an ongoing genocide in Ukraine that he's trying to stop. I mean, this is crazy.
And that's what makes it so hard for me when I was looking at this before to really think that he was going to go through with this, because usually Putin's not a crazy guy. I mean, he may be now, but in the past he's not been. He's been very cold, calculating. Geopolitics and interests was always forefront in his mind.
He's not a psychopath. I mean, well, he might be,
right,
but he doesn't. He's not somebody driven by rage. He is cold and calculating. Yeah. And when he's out and out evil. He is a bloodthirsty killer who has spent a lifetime killing people. But he's logical in it. He's very calculated in it. And the rhetoric, I think the Nazi stuff, the religious stuff, that's Dugin kind of language. Yeah,
and that's a very, very powerful weapon for Russians because they're very much willing to suffer and to basically take it, on the chin if they have to, if that means that their country, will eventually reign supreme. It's interesting if you go and take a tour of the Kremlin and Red Square in Russia, which I've done a couple of times. You'll be very surprised to see that in the Soviet, the former Soviet Union, the capital, in the Red Square, it's probably like 80% churches. There's multiple churches. They weren't religious during the Soviet Union, but historically, during the Russian Empire, they were very religious. Orthodoxy is very, very pivotal to Russian nationalism. And even the Soviets would turn that up when they needed to. But that's exactly what Putin has done in the vein of Alexander Dugin, especially in that speech that he gave, last week. That was very, very telling to a lot of us that have been looking at this, people like you and me, Glenn. That, okay, now we know exactly what he's doing. He's turning up that dial of nationalism to justify doing, what he's doing and possibly even more, which is scary.
Okay. Would you agree with me, and I'd like you to explore this a bit, there is no real obvious win for Putin. His stock market has crashed. This is going to be horrible. They are in the oil business. They just made a deal with China, but that's years down the road. They're going to shut down all of the oil exports into any Western country because of this. So his oil is going to crash, which funds his government and his country. The stock market is down. Business is going to be cut off. It's already a shambles in Russia. What does he have to gain here? Can you think of anything that he has to gain?
I've always thought from the beginning of this, especially when I didn't think that invasion was happening, I thought that what he was really doing was playing a game to divide and conquer NATO. That's what I thought, and I still think that's a major part of his plan. Taking Ukraine is also very, very important strategically for Russia to get strategic depth. It's always been their plan was to, have some buffer so that they can protect their capital of Moscow.
But also the warm water port.
Exactly. Yeah. When he's talking about they're in the heart of Russia, that's true, but I don't really think that really guides him. I think that's just the excuse he uses.
Correct.
to get support from home. But I think that it's very irritating. I think that we're talking about Putin is not a psychopath. I think he is very spiteful. I think that the Russian election interference, which I don't think did anything, I don't want to say that it did, but their election interference, I think, was a direct response to Hillary Clinton and what they did to his election. I think that what a lot of what we're doing now, I think, was a direct response to how the Obama administration and all his foreign policy elite handled 2014 Ukrainian revolution. I think he responds to these people, directly in kind. That's also a reason why he was willing, I think, to back off of this when Trump was there, because he knew that was not how they operated, and they weren't the ones directly responsible for what happened. And I also think that it's ridiculous that NATO wouldn't respond, wouldn't say, "Hey, look, we're not going to admit Ukraine into NATO." Why couldn't they say that? NATO was irrelevant, and the irony of this is now that Putin responding to that is making NATO relevant again. So
right.
I think that eventually his goal is to play the long game. Eventually, there's going to be NATO countries like Germany's not going to want to attack. They're not going to want to send troops.
No.
That's going to cause a divide in NATO. That's going to cause a divide between the UK and France. They're not going to want to attack either. And eventually, this will play out to where NATO will do exactly what he said was what he wanted. He wanted NATO to do a withdrawal. That benefits China and everybody else that's on Russia's side. So his ultimate goal is the long game, divide NATO, possibly even the end of NATO, and to get strategic depth with Ukraine.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jason.